Wildfires are raging all across the country and into Canada. I guess Gregory Wrightstone was a futurist when he wrote the book, A Very Convenient Warming. He joins us now on The Truth. Gregory, welcome.
Good. And we were talking offline about Anthony Fauci in a recent hearing. And actually, I've got a great segue between Fauci and climate change. I credit Anthony Fauci for being one of the most significant people to help the climate realism movement, because he showed, didn't he, that experts are often wrong and experts can sometimes lie about important matters. And we found that out in COVID and him. And it opened people's eyes now. And what we saw in COVID and the lies and deceit and disinformation about ivermectin and all the others and 6-foot distancing, you're not going to get COVID unless you get the jab, or you won't get COVID if you do get the jab. It's even worse in climate change. They lied to you about those things, and they're lying to you every single day about just about everything about climate change. And we'll explore some of this. And that's why I wrote my recent book, A Very Convenient Warming, is we've gone beyond that there is no climate crisis, and there isn't. But in this book, I explore the great benefits. By almost every metric we're looking at, Earth's ecosystems are thriving and prospering. And Earth and humanity is benefiting from modest warming and more CO2. I call it the greatest untold story of the 21st century, that of a thriving planet and benefits to the human condition.
All right. So what are those benefits? Why should we celebrating the expansion of CO2?
Well, the easiest and best has to be agricultural productivity. It's breaking records year after year after year. Almost every country, all countries that I've examined are experiencing crop productivity growth records being broken nearly every year, from the coldest countries to the hottest countries like India. And it's because of a number of things. You say, well, modest warming should harm agriculture, right? Because we're going to have more droughts. And that's not true. There aren't more droughts. But modest warming, what it's done is, since 1900, our growing seasons have lengthened by nearly 2 weeks. That is wonderful for agriculture. So killing frosts end earlier in the spring and arrive later in the fall. Huge benefits. If you've got an apple orchard in Michigan, what do you fear the most? It's a late spring killing frost. And because of this modest warming it's about 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit right now of warming since the Industrial Revolution. And if we look at that, that warming is, again, leading to lengthening growing seasons. And it's turbocharged by an increase in carbon dioxide, or CO2. Because CO2, what do we need for photosynthesis? We need water, sunlight, and CO2. And the more CO2, the better. And so we're still, if we look at the long-term history of carbon dioxide, we're actually in a CO2 carbon dioxide deficit. We're CO2 deprived, and it's below optimal CO2 concentration in the atmosphere for plants to have their optimal growth. And so that's why they pump in CO2 in greenhouses. And if you look around, there's a marijuana growing place right up the street from me here in Florida, and they have big, huge CO2 canisters, tanks that they pump in to pump the CO2 so they can grow marijuana bigger, better, bolder. I don't like it. I drive by it and I can smell it. They have a smoke shop there too. But they know that CO2 is hugely beneficial for their plants. And one of the things I laughed about, we hear all these crazy stories of climate crises, and most of them are just incorrect. The one that I found that was correct was they said, well, poison ivy is going to increase because of climate change. And they're right, because poison ivy is and will grow faster and better with more CO2. And that's because CO2 is an equal opportunity plant fertilizer. It's going to fertilize poison ivy along with corn and soybeans and rice. So maybe they're right about that one, but they don't get much else right.
Well, it certainly hasn't helped kudzu, That should have been the state flower in Georgia where I raised my family. But kudzu, I think, is probably approaching the endangered species list, but it's not because of CO2. I think it's because of development. And everywhere you look, they're eradicating fields of kudzu, no loss really to humanity that I can tell. But what do you think is the motivation? I mean, I agree with you that it does feel like we're being sold a bill of goods. And I principally rely on the fact that what was the former Secretary of State's name that looks like a character from the Munsters, John Kerry. He said like 15 or 20 years ago that if we didn't react quickly to this climate change, that we only had 10 years left before we would burn up. And then he repeated it 10 years after that. And now he's repeating it again for the third decade in a row. Well, that just completely cuts his credibility as far as I'm concerned. It is hysterical, and it makes me not believe them. I mean, I think, hadn't the Earth been warming since the Ice Age? Since whenever we determined that the Ice Age was over, hasn't there been a general warming trend?
Actually, no. And we're in what's called the Holocene era. And actually we are still in an ice age. That's one of my pet peeves is people say, well, we're not in we are in an ice age. We just happen to be in an interglacial warming period within this Pleistocene ice age. And so it's a good thing we're in this warm period. And that started 10 or 12,000 years ago. And the peak of the ice advance was about 18,000 years ago, 17,000 years ago. And so if you go back 10,000 years during this Holocene period, the period from about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago was called the Holocene Optima. And it was much, much warmer. It's the warmest period of the last 10,000 years. And since that, about 6,000 years ago, temperature has gradually been in decline. I mean, it's in fits and starts. We have warm periods, cool periods, but the overall trend has been cooling. And also over the last 10,000 years, CO2 levels have been increasing. And so we have is increasing CO2 and decreasing temperature. Now we are within that 10,000 year period, we have these warming periods and cool periods. And so again, it's kind of a sawtooth, but the overall trend is generally declining. And so the last three warming periods we're in, they were all similar to ours today, but they were all warmer than today. And we can go back. They were the Minoan, the Roman, the medieval warm periods. The first was the Minoan warm period correlated to the Bronze Age. And the first great civilization and empires rose up, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Hittites, the Harappan Empire in the Indus River Valley. They all bloomed and prospered. It was much, much warmer than it is today. Life was good. Food was bountiful. And if you were an empire, if you're an emperor back then, in a warm period, they loved you. You could feed your subjects. But if you were an emperor, and I think you'd make a great emperor, by the way, but if you were an emperor when it started getting cold, you weren't long for being an emperor because what we see recognized is each time it started getting cooling again, we had crop failure, famine, pestilence, and mass depopulation. So they'd be kept coming after you with the pitchforks. And that's what we saw happen. It was called the Late Bronze Age collapse. That led into the Greek Dark Ages, the new movie, is it the Iliad that just came out with Homer's epic? That took place during what was called the Greek or the Bronze Age, Late Bronze Age collapse.
Well, how do you explain, or what do you attribute all the explosion of wildfires that we're seeing across our country right now in real time? I mean, it does seem to be on wildfires, big forest fires do seem to be on the increase, anecdotally from my seat.
Yeah, if you take a look at the actual data, and we have data going back to 1926 for the United States, number of fires has been definitely in decline, significantly in decline. Area burned has been declining also. Now, these fires have been increasing in intensity, starting in the mid 80s, early 80s. 1983 is actually the year it really turned around. We'd seen declining number and area burned, and then Bill Clinton in the early 80s made a big change for how we're going to manage forests. They stopped logging. They stopped doing prescribed burns. Because of that, we have a lot more fuel. So when there is a fire, there's a lot more fuel to be burned, a lot more trees per acre than what there should be. According to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, there are 4 to 5 times too many trees per acre. And what does that mean? You understand with that, you get more fuel for the fire, but also think about it too. Each tree is using a lot of water, and as they're using that water, it accelerates decrease in soil moisture, which then leads to dryness, which then leads to more fires. Now you've got lots of kindling out there ready to burn. The other thing when they stopped logging, they used to be able to go back to the fires using the logging roads, but those logging roads now have all grown up over the last 40 plus years. So the only way in to fight these fires is airdrops, which is difficult and not as effective. And so we've seen an increase in the size and intensity of the fires in the United States. But interesting, both fires, number of fires and area burned have decreased significantly over the last 80 years. And we see that also in Canada. Again, we have seen the number of fires has declined. And the Canadian Fire Service admits that. You can go to their website and pull up their data. Area burned in Canada, it's all over the place year to year. Some years are bad with lots of fires, others, lots of area burned. But right now it's being attributed. I've just got a commentary from one of the CO2 Coalition members. He lives in Alberta. And it was an interesting commentary from his perspective. And he's saying that part of the problem, one of the big unreported problems in Canada, is that that they're using glyphosate or Roundup. They're allowed to spray it on the crown forests and the boreal forests of Canada by the lumber companies that are lumbering up there. They're still allowed to timber. They use that to kill the broadleaf trees. They don't want things like aspen and the other type of broadleaf tree. They want the valuable conifers, the softwood, for that's the valuable lumber that they're trying to get. And so it's really just a big monoculture. And these conifers are resin rich, and when they burn intensely. And he attributes a lot of this to this spraying of glyphosate. They have this monoculture of conifer trees for the timber industry.
It's delicious, it's nutritious, and best of all, no dishes. We're talking about Bogey's Beef Jerky, of course. Premium craft beef jerky that's taken off at the most prominent golf courses and resorts across America. Made for the turn, the road, or whenever you need a bold, protein-packed snack, Bogey's delivers the rich flavor and that premium chew every time. From smoky heat to Pineapple Express, try some Bogey's Beef. They've got a flavor for every player. Bogey's Beef Jerky. Tee it up, tear it up, and enjoy. Today's broadcast is brought to you in part by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in North Georgia. They will sanitize the front of the house, the back of the house, remove your waste vegetable oil, clean your grease trap, and your vent hoods. If you're tired of slow, inconsistent, unreliable, and dirty service from your provider, check out PCRenergy.com. They're in Atlanta, no automated attendance, and they'll give you a quick response. PCRenergy.com, where you get to speak to a live person, no automated attendance, and they give clean, good, reliable service, locally owned and operated in Atlanta. It's www.pcrenergy.com. Well, Gary, let me ask you, if we accept your belief and the data that you presented, that climate change is a fiction, which is what I'm hearing.
Nope.
Okay.
I never, it's not a fiction. Climate change is happening. I happen to believe it's what we see has been beneficial, really, really good for humanity, for everybody. So yes, is climate change happening? Yes, it's getting warmer. It just is. But the key here is the warming that we're in right now started more than 300 years ago. And it's only been in the last, most recent 60 or 70 years, since the mid 20th century, that we started adding a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere. So the first 200 plus years of this warming trend had to have been entirely naturally driven.
Okay, so climate change is occurring.
Yes.
You think that it is, you're saying that it's beneficial, and you're making a compelling argument relative to agriculture, for instance. I happen to live in Florida as well, and good reason I'm here is because I like warm weather.
Yep.
So it's not all bad, but what do you attribute the, I guess, liberal component of our culture that is so hyped on climate change and wanting draconian kinds of responses to it, limitations on oil drilling, on fracking and expansion of fossil fuel research, development, and production? What's their angle? I mean, what motivation can you come up with if you believe that they're trying to sell us a bill of goods?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get this question all the time. I think there are a number of things here. Some people actually believe it because they don't know any better. Give me 10 minutes with somebody in my book, and I can 95% of the population, they look and they go, wow, I didn't know that.
Well, radio really? Requires the Cliff Notes version, so
yes,
it can distill that down for us.
Yeah, I understand. I do a lot of radio. So some believe it. Others, I think, are making a lot of money. I don't think, I know they're making a lot of money at it. Some of it's control. They want to control every aspect of your life. And what they're doing it using climate change. I mean, your viewers have been systematically losing a lot of their freedoms based on climate change. You don't have the freedom. They want to take away your freedom of what kind of car to drive. They've already taken away your freedom to choose what kind of light bulb you can buy.
Yeah. Taken
away your freedom on buying. You're not allowed to buy a toilet with a large flush capacity anymore, even though in Florida, it's been raining every day for 3 weeks. We don't have a water problem. And but yet you can't, your freedom to buy a toilet that flushes with one flush, or a dishwasher that doesn't take 3.5 or 4 hours to run. My wife would like their definition in the Biden area was an efficient dishwasher uses very little electricity and very little water, but it takes 3.5 or 4 hours to run it.
Yeah.
And my wife's definition of an efficient dishwasher is one that gets it really clean, dry, and ready to go in 45 minutes.
And answers to the name of Gregory, I suspect. All right. Yeah. So how do you reconcile all this with the fact that I don't think it is debatable that in many places, our air is dirty, our waters are polluted, and we could do a better job of protecting our planet. Our oceans are horribly polluted. You're going to tell me no?
Not. Absolutely not. Absolutely.
You're going to tell me Atlanta does not suffer from air pollution?
I didn't say that, but I will tell you.
I said in many places.
Compared to what it was like in 1976, 1980, it's much, much, much better in Atlanta, in LA.
Well, I beg to differ with you. I live in Atlanta, or I did.
The data doesn't support that. The data, if you go to EPA.
I don't need data to tell me what my eyes see and my body reacts to. I never had allergies until I moved to Atlanta at 27 or 28 years old. After having lived there 2 or 3 years, I had chronic allergic reactions to the air that I was breathing, and suffered from fatigue sufficiently that I had to get medical care. And when we crossed everything off the list of possible causes, my doctor said, well, have you been to an allergist? It turned out that I was allergic to breathing the air that we were breathing in Atlanta. I'll also tell you that within 48 hours of the shutdown that resulted from the COVID pandemic, Atlanta's air was an order of magnitude cleaner and clearer. We went from smog to blue, crystal blue skies. You're not going to convince me that wasn't a result of not having automobiles on the road.
I can't speak for Atlanta. I don't know the details for Atlanta. I've not looked
at it. Well, Los Angeles, New York.
Los Angeles skies and air is cleaner today than it's been in probably 100 years.
Okay, so we're making progress, but it's not, I don't think that it's optimum. Do you?
It's pretty close. Yes, it's pretty close.
Well, my son lives there. He would argue pretty.
Well, just let me explain.
Sure.
Go to one website. Just search for EPA and pollution. See what the EPA says about air pollutants in the United States. It's our air and our water are cleaner today than they probably have been since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It's just a fact. The data supports that fact.
No question, we're doing better. But do you feel that we are there? Do you think
we're pretty damn close? Yes, I do.
Well, what about all the plastic in the oceans and the dying of the fish populations in the China Sea?
There is no huge amount of plastic pollution in the oceans. That's absolutely false.
Gary, I've read that it would take a lifetime to rid the oceans of all the plastic straws, let alone the other pollutants that people are dumping into the ocean.
Well, there is plastic and trash being dumped into the ocean, but that's from Southeast Asia. It's not from us. And again, if I would recommend my colleague Patrick Moore's book that he's got that really goes in and exposes. You've probably seen pictures of this great plastic gyre that's in Pacific Ocean, and actually it looks bad, but if you look in the distance, you can see land in the distance, and that was actually a picture after Fukushima, after the tsunami washed all this crap after devastated Fukushima. They had all those buildings and everything out there, and that picture. There's a lot of misinformation out there about that.
Well, again, my own paradigm, I invited you on to interview, not to listen to me pontificate, but my belief has always been that you don't throw stuff out of your car window, that you don't throw garbage in the ocean, that you don't put pollutants into our streams and waterways, and that we should leave the world a better place than we found it.
And we are.
And we are. I don't think that conflicts with really your beliefs about climate.
The science and the facts do not back up what you're saying. The science and the facts tell us that our air, the 7 major criteria pollutants are at such low levels today. To get them any lowers, it's going to be really, really difficult to get that very last little bit of NOx and SOx and all the other pollutants. It's so low already. And that's what go to the website and look at the EPA.
So you would just say that maintain the status quo. We don't need improvements in the air, water, or seas.
We'll keep doing what we're doing, but to try and get now we're talking about parts per billion. Our air and our water have always been polluted, if you will, naturally. And there's lead and arsenic and things like that were here long before we discovered America. These are natural. Some of these are just natural pollutants that come out, and so it's at such low levels today. It'll be really expensive to go that next step to get it much lower in terms of pollutants in the air than we are today.
All right, there you have it. Gregory Wrightstone. He's got a book, A Very Convenient Warming. Thank you, Gregory. I appreciate you coming on and educating us on climate and the air and water.
All right. Thank you. Sleep well. There is no climate crisis, and your air is just fine. Thank you.
And you heard it here first. Thank you, Gregory. Appreciate you coming on.